Just as physical wars leave behind unintended victims, the cultural and psychological battles shaping our society today also create invisible wounds, dividing communities, straining family bonds, and reshaping our moral landscapes. The foundation of all this chaos is the destruction of men and boys. As Professor James Davidson Hunter highlighted in his influential book, Culture Wars: The Struggle to Define America, these ideological conflicts aren't just American issues, they touch us all, including here in St. Lucia. Pew Research Forum explored this phenomena in an article called Is There a Culture War? The article explained, in Culture Wars: The Struggle to Define America, Hunter argued that there was a battle raging between traditionalists, who were committed to moral ideals inherent from the past, and the progressivists, who idealized change and flexibility. These different worldviews, Hunter argued, were responsible for increasingly heated disputes over such issues as abortion, sexuality, education, and the role of religious institutions in society. Cumulatively, Hunter says in his essay, these debates concerning the wide range of social institutions amounted to a struggle over the meaning of America. This culture war is between two systems of ideas, or ideals: traditionalism and progressivism. These ideas represent the left and right wings of global politics, the shift to global governments. Listen to this quick explanation.
The difference between left and right-wing ideology fundamentally comes down to the balance between individual liberty and government power. The left strive for an equal society and believe that the state should play a substantial role in people's lives. This means increased regulation on business and higher taxes on the rich. The left also tend to hold more progressive views, often opposing the death penalty while supporting same-sex marriage and women's right to abortion. The left have more lenient views on immigration and are usually the driving force behind any separation of church and state. The right believe that a level of social inequality is inevitable and think that the government should have a limited role in people's lives and business. This is, as the right believes, that preserving personal freedom should be the government's main goal and should not impose too many rules on people's lives. The right also tend to hold more traditional and religious attitudes than the left, often opposing things those on the left support, such as same-sex marriage and women's right to abortion.
Men are more inclined to the traditionalist perspective in their natural temperament. The left-wing extreme version of progressive ideas are destroying men globally. But when did this culture war truly begin, and why? James Hunter says he first became aware of what he called the culture war in the late 1980s. He noticed similar tactics being used by activists on both sides on various issues, from abortion and gay rights to anti-smoking campaigns and protests against nuclear power. The culture war did not originate in 1980s. James became aware of it then. It actually began in the 1960s with the evolution of the feminist movement. An article by PBS News stated that as the feminist movement evolved in the 1960s, women started challenging the exclusion from politics and the workplace. They also began to question traditional sex roles. And as female sexuality and premarital sex moved out of the shadows, the pill became a convenient scapegoat for the sexual revolution among social conservatives. In the midst of the civil rights and anti-war movements, the young generation of the 60s questioned authority and rejected their parents' values. This shift ignited the tension between traditionalist conservatives committed to moral ideals and liberal progressives. Why then is the shift in culture from a conservative moralistic perspective to a progressive one seen as effectuating the fall of men? The system of ideas which have said to uphold freedom of the Western world and made men more responsible is grounded in Judeo-Christian worldview. Critics of this structure summarized it in a single word: the patriarchy. Patriarchy is defined by Cambridge Dictionary as a society in which the oldest male is the leader of the family, or a society controlled by men in which they use their power to their own advantage.
My professor back in grad school used to say, if women were to stop supporting the patriarchy, it would crumble in a day. Just like every structure of systemic oppression, the patriarchy is founded on various pillars which are needed to keep the structure intact. We have been told that if men, and only men, an essential pillar in supporting the patriarchy, were to alter their behavior, the patriarchy would collapse. Even though men need to be held accountable for their behaviors, I want to shift the narrative today from waiting for men to dismantle the patriarchy to what we as women can do to crumble it.
I believe that feminism helps us to think about how nuclear weapons are related to the patriarchy. The patriarchy as a system that privileges men, especially those that conform to a certain kind of masculinity. A masculinity that equates strength with violence, that equates security with the capacity and the willingness to use force. It's a system where you need weapons to be strong and secure.
Patriarchy was woven into our civilizations, our laws, economies, philosophies, sciences, and especially our religions. It is everywhere, and it is invisible. It's no accident that we replaced ancient images of God as both male and female with images of God as a man.
But haven't we made progress since those times?
In some ways, yes.
It is evident that the social structure which the concept patriarchy tries to define had its flaws, like most systems do. The pull towards excessive progressivism led to the erosion of morality proposed by the feminist ethos, creates a worse problem than it purports to solve: the destruction of boys and men, fathers, and by extension, the family. Blame is not the intention, but simply the acknowledgement of the system of destructive ideas brought forward as a solution to a real problem, but was taken to an extreme and created another problem. An article by Jennifer Lennon, The Crisis of Masculinity and the Renegotiation of Power Notes, due to rapid social, economic, and political change, many aspects of the traditional male sex role have been rendered increasingly dysfunctional and absolute. This has led to a period of destabilization in traditional gender roles and relationships, prompting sex roles strain and a contemporary crisis of masculinity. This alleged crisis has given rise to renewed interest in the male sex role, providing the impetus for a new field of study in the 80s known as men's studies. This article examines the underlying assumption of the so-called crisis of masculinity theory and the factors that have precipitated this alleged crisis, namely the rise of feminism and the women's movement, the gay liberation movement, the declining emotional and mental health of men, and the rise of mass media and popular culture. The last 50 years, men have fallen behind on every important metric of development. There is so much to unpack here. On this issue, I have read the books The Boys' Crisis, Reaching and Teaching Boys, Fatherhood, Understanding the Purpose and Power of Men, Better Dads, Stronger Sons, and Man's Search for Meaning, in hope of finding a practical solution to the problem. As a teacher at an all-boys school, I believe with evidence to support my claim that the shift in culture from a more traditionalist perspective to an extremely progressivist ideology caused the destruction of men and boys in physical health, mental health, education, and economic health. This crisis is on a global scale. A series is necessary to explore the problem and provide practical policy solutions and habits to implement as parents if you have a son and or aspiring to have children.